Hi, Richard.
Hi, Karen.
Good. I'm glad it's smooth today.
I'm glad it decided to work as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we got to reschedule because this is a really important topic. I think today we have to talk about
That's
the power imbalances, safety from the storm, and mediation. Correct?
correct. They exist in every mediation, just to different degrees for sure.
Oh, does it? Okay. So I can't wait for you to dive in because I think this is what a lot of people need to hear.
hmm well, I mean, like I say that, and the people often that I meet, like early on in the process, like where we're doing the free call, where we're doing the intake session.
Hmm.
Often, the party that they're describing having a relationship with isn't who's showing up in the intake,
Hmm.
right? Like, so often this person is like the conflict in the relationship is contextual. It's not necessarily personal. Like, it's not because of a particular like who they are. It's just like who this relationship brings them out as. And when like I get to meet them, I get to meet like not just some of the things that led me to know the other person's perspective as real, but also like a much more fuller picture. And that often, the person who is, arguably they're pursuing, they might be considered the person who is, instigating conflict or whatnot.
Hmm.
But often they're pretty exhausted by the conflict either, and they kind of want to stop. They just don't know how,
Right.
right?
Is that where you come in then?
Yeah, yeah, it is
Hmm.
where I come in. I need to know that the pursuer, like the one who's pursuing contact, pursuing answers, like whatever is important to them, whatever they feel is threatened, I need to know that I can help contain them. But
Hmm.
also, like when a particular topic comes up that their former spouse is talking about, they're going to want to say something, right? And they won't always wait for their turn. So I need to be able to capture that and
Hmm.
capture it in such a way that they feel like I've heard them, and then I return the stage to like to the other party. And if I feel that I can do that,
Hmm.
then I can work with this person. Like, can I contain them, or help them contain themselves is more important. Um, and then, yeah, really, that's kind of step one.
So that is in a way you mean by containment. Are you meaning like emotional regulating? Is that in a
Yeah,
way?
yeah, like emotional regulation is definitely what I'm pointing at there,
Yeah.
because they like whatever habit they become, well, like whatever is their habit in communication, like pursuing like whatever is provocative, or whatever is potentially threatening, or just they just feel like the urge to speak more
Hmm.
often to people, right? There needs to be like the ability to sort of start shifting that throughout the process, and depending on how much they're willing to share about them, how reflective they are, like how, like, can I actually get them to self-reflect,
Hmm.
like those kinds of things will help inform whether or not I feel like I can work with them.
So the power and like the power imbalances is so one of them is emotional regulation or containment. Is there anything else that you find that imbalances with?
I mean, sometimes there are ways that the withdrawing party can also communicate, that is also part of the dynamic. I mean, there are obviously more obvious signs of power. We know where
Hmm.
we're talking about, like anger, aggression, or no, just frustration. Like, it's very visible, right?
Hmm.
But there are other ways that certain withdrawing parties do communicate, and it's how they've learned to rebalance things, but it's actually part of the conflict dynamic between the two
Hmm.
people. Um, they might be things that might be seen by the other party as like digs, like just like
Hmm.
under, like are. they're communicating their feelings and what's important to them, but ultimately it also does need to be contained as well, but in such a way that, you know, we don't shut anybody down, right? And that's a very you know, difficult balance sometimes to give enough empathy, but to also sort of teach a new way and model a new way of communicating.
Mm-hmm. Would you also say, I just want to ask this quick for my own, like, would you behaviors, like, so we know verbal is one way, but if, you know, their body behavior is also another way that could be a way that they might show imbalance or show, like, if someone's curled in or someone's, you know what I mean? Does that also come into play?
It does when it does when a conflict comes up, or at least, you know, like if the withdrawing party is really not getting enough of what they
Mm-hmm.
want, and they start kind of like, you know, doing one of
Mm-hmm.
these or whatever, or they start curling in, then it's a sign that I need to like I need to bring them back
Mm-hmm.
out. And that may or may not happen in the live session. Like usually if I've seen some of those tendencies during the intake, like what I might want to do is to coach them into the possibility that we might need to go into caucus to sort of talk about what's, you know, like what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
because ultimately I really want them to be engaged in the process. And if they can't engage in the process, then, you know, we really need to strategize and to see what the best way forward is. And a caucus can take care of some of some of the the desire to not be vulnerable in front of the other party.
Mm-hmm.
That they
Mm-hmm.
want to talk privately, we can always talk privately. So that also works when we're talking about having caucuses with the other party that I'm trying to help contain,
Mm-hmm.
right? You know, like if my efforts to at containment, if my efforts to capture things really aren't, you know, like they're working in the moment, but there's like a pattern developing,
Mm-hmm.
then we kind of I need to coach them on, you know, like perhaps like starting to write things down, because we do need to make
Mm-hmm.
progress. Otherwise, party's going to lose interest and lose engagement,
Makes
right?
sense. Is there any other, I know you talked about steps. Is there any other steps you take to try to calm the, like if they're feeling, you know, an imbalance in power with the negotiations? Is there any other steps you take?
So, I mean, with the party who, it really depends on what they disclose as
Mm-hmm.
being the power imbalance. I mean, if somebody is really afraid,
Mm-hmm.
like really, really afraid, then we might not go into a joint session at all. Like it will all be
Right.
done in a shuttle mediation process where I'm moving back and forth between the two of them. I haven't done a lot of my mediations like that.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely prefer to work if there is the possibility of open communication. Um, but that party needs to know that at any point that they can ask for a break, right?
Right.
And that if they're really feeling threatened, it's not good. It's not good. It's not good for them. It's not good for their wellness. But it's also, if I usually pick up on it,
Mm-hmm.
but if I don't, and they're continuing to make decisions and they're feeling under duress, I mean, it's unethical for me to practice under
Right.
those conditions. So like
Mm-hmm.
they need to know that at any point this is a voluntary process. And if it's not working for them, they're feeling unsafe on a regular basis, and they really don't think that they're going to get their needs met, then I need to know that as soon as possible so that we can either re-strategize, or you know, like if they've really, or if we can't find a solution, then I can terminate the process and just say that it's, you know, like it's my opinion that, you know, like the process has reached its finality, like that there's not going to be an agreement between the parties. So the onus would never be on them
Mm-hmm.
to be in the process. I would take that responsibility, you know, to
Right.
preserve their safety, even though it was them who decided that it's not working, right?
So you must have a lot of open communication, talking amongst the couple and you to navigate all this.
Yeah. I definitely work as a relational mediator. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there are different ways of practicing, and some say keep emotions out and keep the story of the conflict out. I feel very comfortable working with that as long as I know in the beginning that there's enough reflective capacity to actually go into these things. But not only that, that I know in advance that it's actually going to help them reach a more durable agreement. Like I'm not going to go into the I'm not going to go into the story of this, he said, she said
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
or the experience of what the relationship was like, but how it impacts, the it is impacting both of the clients. So really coming to an understanding of how it is impacting, if I can bring it out of the room, or if it can happen in a caucus, then we get from, some agreements that, maybe rationally, um, they might work for people, but are they sustainable? Are they really something that respect all of their values and all of, what they really care about? And
Mm-hmm.
that's the real possibility when we allow the chances for, being a little uncomfortable, or being maybe a little bit more than a little uncomfortable, but only to do so to achieve a more durable agreement. I have to know that in advance, otherwise I won't go into that territory.
So it sounds like, so if you're dealing with, like, if you're seeing some power imbalances, which I'm sure happens, right?
Yeah.
That going into these caucuses and talking to them individually can probably really be beneficial. Is that
It
correct?
can mean the difference between, a process moving forward and it ending very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because if I don't if I don't work to help somebody to change the way that they're engaging, if they're, if they are having a lot of difficulty dealing with the immensity of what they're
Mm-hmm.
feeling threatened on a regular basis. If I can't get them to, to see that what I've assessed as being the most important thing for them, if I can get them to see that this particular, way of engaging is not going to help them. If
Mm-hmm.
I really can't, if I can't reach them and get them on board for, bearing with what they're feeling what they're feeling in the moment, then really it's going to come to an abrupt end. You know,
How many do you, how many, how common is that you do these things? Like that you have to talk to them individually?
um,
Is it?
that's a good question. I think more often what I get is I get a lot of the stronger emotions
Mm-hmm.
right at the beginning.
Yeah, of
I
course.
get it in the intake session, I get it in the free call, but more often than not, with the cases that I've worked with, I'm able to start, slowing everybody down enough, or helping them feel more empowered, helping them feel like when they actually speak up, they're going to get their needs met.
Mm-hmm.
Either one, we get a different level of engagement. Not a lot of my cases actually where I get to use some of these, like caucuses or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. I tend to almost always do it in the session.
Mm-hmm.
It's just good that people know that they can, that if I feel that they're feeling extra vulnerable, or if
Mm-hmm.
they're feeling that it's not appropriate for them to want to talk about it in front of the other party, then the option is there.
I think that's a very good option,
Yeah,
right? Especially
yeah,
if there's, they're divorcing for a reason.
sure,
And
yeah.
right. So I think it's a good thing to that they know that they go, okay, so I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, or I'm not, I'm tired of the way they're treating me all the time, because that comes into the negotiations, right? So having that and being able to say to you what, you know, what there's really upsetting them or whatever, and then you could kind of put that into your negotiation skills, right, in your set, like your. So that's really good information there, Richard. I didn't even know that. So.
Wonderful. I think there's two main points to what's going on, like in the power imbalance. I think there's the presence of grief,
Mhm.
either anticipating or somebody who has been, contemplating their
Mhm.
separation for a long time. But there's also the desire for self-reliance. And if we can turn the conflict from being about the other to being about what I can do for myself,
Mm.
then a person's desire to be self-reliant over the long term can be their new goal, as opposed to continuing to seek redress for past hurts or past problems. It means that instead of, we re-bracket the conversation, as opposed to being something where we're talking about the end of a relationship, we're actually talking about the start of something new. And if we can change that bracket, if I can really do a big sky moment with one or both parties, then that completely changes the dynamic, and it's really wonderful when that actually does happen.
I think that's the wonderful thing about mediation is it's a moving forward
Yeah.
type of thing, right? Instead of trying to deal with all the past hurts and stuff. I know that comes up, but it's mediation is really good for because it's a forward moving motion and in grief, because I'm a grief counselor specialist, I know that they have to work through that too. So it is big. It's one of the big components also with it's a death of relationship, and either you wanted it or you didn't. There's still a lot of grief there, and it could be different grief for everybody. I mean, depending on the person, right? So
context is so important when we're talking about grief and what comes up in the moment.
Yeah.
And like if people think it's okay for them to feel what they're feeling, sometimes it doesn't even need to be spoken. They can recognize what it is, and perhaps even how it's playing in the conversation that they're having. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this was very informative. Is there anything else you want to add, or anybody have any comments or wanted to ask Richard any questions about power imbalances and mediation? If not, do you have any other last points, or we're going to wrap it up for today?
I think that's all. I think we got all the most important things. I mean, sure, I made some notes, but we got the best stuff. I know that.
It was a good one. Good talk. And Richard, where can they get in touch with you if they're interested in mediating with you?
So they can find me on my website or through my website at alignchoices.com, or find me, contact me by email at richard@alignchoices.com.
All right, perfect. All right, thanks again, Richard. I hope to have you back again, and we'll talk soon. Bye, everybody.
Certainly. Bye for now.